listeners, I see Michael already smiling. He anticipates what I would say. My good friend.
Yeah, and I put my head on a block, and I offer Mr. Brother Bishop the scalpel to cut it off.
The political leader has said several times up to last night that is not a reflection of her personal views or the views of the party. And you understand, George, how elections at the party level work.
So, Dr. Payne, do you have ties? Do you have ties to the National Democratic Congress, Dr. Payne? Or rather, were you commissioned by the NDC to do this poll?
Information because it seems interesting that a lot of your advice is very consistent with what was said. Brilliant.
And Claudette, good luck with everything.
You too, man. May the best candidate win in the town of St. George.
But kill on.
Yes.
You is a tongue man too, so stop it up. Tell everybody you are a tongue man too.
We are a people who have always aspired for more. Who've always aspired to do better. Who've always accepted that not because your mother didn't go to secondary school, you should go. It has always been the other way around. You should aspire.
You've been there for a long time. Want to be queen of St. Andrews. But yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews.
And if you're not careful with how and what you say on radio, you will cause people to fight here.
I thrive on that controversy. Some people hate it, but I love it. In other words, every time something goes viral, it's about Kem Jones.
Some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that work for 26 years plus not getting anything. It's just unfair.
God is good, and God looks after me. You know, not just my wife is no longer here, so both herself and the father up there are looking after me very, very well indeed.
Not a few people that you pick up by the side of the road to run in an election. These are not people that you mustered up and you pulled together a few months before you think an election is going to call and you say we want to win an election, so let's come together.
Hello and welcome to the February 18th edition of the Bubb Report. This week, the program spotlights the current state of migration and immigration in the Eastern Caribbean against the backdrop of a mass exodus of Haitian nationals owing to the current gang-related upheavals enveloping the country. The 12 Haitian nationals who were denied entry into Grenada last week might have been part of the more than 96,000 people forced to flee their homes in Port-au-Prince, the country's capital. According to the United Nations International Organization for Migration, 17,000 Haitians remain without a permanent home after a 7.2 magnitude earthquake struck southwest Haiti in August 2021.
What I think that we have seen in Grenada yesterday is the most recent incarnation of an appalling lack of sympathy and understanding towards Haiti, and political refusal to see Haitians as our brothers and sisters in this regard.
If you're not a citizen of Grenada and you come to Grenada, you could only be staying at a hotel, unless you had a friend or family. And in the absence of friends or family, then it means you have to be able to afford a hotel, at least for one night. And if you don't have cash or credit card that allows you to afford a hotel for one night, it means you don't have a place to stay.
The Haiti story has also unleashed a volley of xenophobia among some Grenadians who expressed bigoted opinions normally meted out to unauthorized Grenadian migrants in Europe and North America.
We have immigration laws, and laws are there to uphold, not to break the laws. And the immigration people did the right thing. But I believe there's something more to it than these 15 people coming. You want to tell me these people don't have a child or they don't have children? They come for a special purpose. But who had to go and meet them or who had to go and make an arrangement for them didn't show up. They come to bring the voodoo here. Go back in your country and stay there. Have a good day.
As African Americans in the United States celebrate Black History Month, we here at the Bubb Report will feature a Grenadian American immigrant who has made some Black history of his own. Gosnell Duncan, who became paralyzed from below the waist in 1965, soon became a disability advocate. It was during his time as a disability advocate that he started contemplating penile substitutes for women. He then crafted sex toys to cater to other people with disabilities. Duncan also pioneered the use of body-safe silicone rubber. As Duncan became involved in the disability movement in the late 1960s, he learned he wasn't alone. Many other disabled people wanted to have good sex, but didn't know where to turn for help. While many saw themselves as sexual beings, their doctors, not to mention the sexual revolution, did not. Even in the disability movement at large, many chose to focus on other more serious issues. Duncan began brainstorming on his own about how he could make sex aids for the disabled, spurring the birth of adult entertainment toys. As a disclaimer, the first segment of the Bubb Report is only intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. We welcome our guests, Dr. Haley Lieberman, sex historian and journalist, Assistant Superintendent Leroy Joseph, the head of Grenada's Immigration and Passport Department, Alana Wheeler, human trafficking expert, and Dr. Justin Peer, labor market and migration consultant. Here is our host, Dr. Kellon Bubb, with the Bubb Report's weekly editorial, titled, Why the Carriacou Carnival Holiday Should Be a National Holiday. We thank you for joining us.
A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to yet another episode of the Bubb Report. We're certainly happy you can join us. Unfortunately, we're having some teleprompter issues today, and as such, the weekly editorial would be published and streamed at another time. But at this time, I wish to welcome our first guest for this morning's program. This is a very interesting segment in our research on highlighting Grenadian Americans who have made significant contributions to America's Black History and Black History Month. We've decided, and we actually were able to happen upon a very interesting story. And I have Haley Lieberman here, who would talk to us about that particular Grenadian inventor that many Grenadians are not aware of. But of course, let me introduce Haley first. She is a sex historian and journalist. She's the author of Buzz, A Stimulating History of the Sex Toy, and she's currently working on a book on the history of gigolos. Her writing has appeared in BuzzFeed News, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Vice News, and other publications. Now, as a disclaimer, this conversation is an adult-only conversation. So I know that the Bubb Report usually tends to be a family show, so all of the kids, would you get them out of the rooms or the kitchens for those of our viewers who watch the Bubb Report while cooking their Sunday lunches. So, Dr. Lieberman, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us, you happened upon Mr. Gosnell Duncan. Now, he has a very interesting story in respect of a story that really started off sadly, because, of course, he ended up having an injury, and so in the process of that injury, he became physically disabled or differently abled. But then he was able to make this discovery. My first question to you is, how did you get to know Mr. Duncan?
Yeah, so I actually was introduced to him by this woman I was interviewing who made silicone dildos after Duncan, actually. And she said, look, if you're telling the story of the sex toy industry, you have to talk about Gosnell Duncan. She's like, I don't know where to find him, but you have to talk about him. And so I just Googled him and a phone number came up, and I literally cold called him.
Oh, so you cold called him, and at the time he was residing in Brooklyn?
Yeah, he was in Brooklyn. He picks up the phone and he has no idea who I am. And I'm like, I'm a grad student. I'm doing this dissertation, and some people might hang up the phone and be like, I don't want to talk to you. But Gosnell was a sweetheart, and he stayed on the phone the first time for like 40 minutes, told me his story, told me to call whenever. He was just like such a great guy.
And talk to us about his work in the disability rights movement, because before we get to what he invented, he also became heavily involved in the disability rights movement. Can you tell us what spurred that?
Yeah, so Gosnell was actually coming to the US from Grenada. He was in his 30s. And he made a stop off in Brooklyn to see someone from Grenada, Angela. They sort of fell in love, and he needed a job. So he went actually to International Harvester Company in Chicago. That was like the best place he could find a job. He was working there, and he was working the night shift, and a truck bed fell on him because someone had put a bolt in wrong in the shift before, and he became disabled from the waist down. He was engaged to marry Angela, who he loved. He was devastated. This was the late 1960s.
About 1965, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was late 30s. He was young, and he didn't know what to do, because now he can't feel anything from his waist down. He's about to get married. He is impotent, and his dream of, a quote unquote, like a life without disability, he didn't expect this. His life immediately changed in that second.
Yes. And yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, and so he, went to the doctor, got rehab. They didn't mention anything about sex at all. They didn't, it wasn't something they cared about. They mentioned people were too uncomfortable. And he was like, how can I, lead a normal life? And he realized he had to take this matter into his own hands. Like, he had to, if he wanted to learn about how to cure his impotence, if he wanted to do this, he would have to figure it out on his own.
Yeah. Now, one of the things you mentioned in one of the articles that I read is that he became a disability advocate. He started to attend disability conferences. And I'm quoting from one of the articles. You say many other disabled people wanted to have good sex, but didn't know where to turn for help. While many saw themselves as sexual beings, their doctors, not to mention the sexual revolution, did not. Even in the disability movement at large, many chose to focus on other more serious issues, whereas Duncan began brainstorming on his own how he could make sex aids for the disabled. So this is not only a matter of just sheer pleasure, but it's a matter of ensuring that the differently abled community had the same access to sex as a human right as other groups in society.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we think of sex toys and we're like, ooh, they're salacious. They're, just sort of this thing that doesn't have that much importance in society or whatever, if people think of sex toys at all. But this was an issue for the disability community. So they were afraid. I mean, he went to, so first off, people weren't talking about it. And he goes to a disability conference. He finally finds a disability conference where they actually have a panel on sexuality. That was rare in and of itself, that they were even talking about it. So they have this panel, and in the panel, he says, how many of you would buy a device like a dildo to enhance your life? And a bunch of people raised their hands, and he thought, I have a business idea that I can go forward with. But this was not something a lot of people were talking about. And this is before the American with Disabilities Act. So being disabled in the US, I mean, there were no rules. I read letters to Duncan at this time, and people are on college campuses and they can't get around because there are no wheelchair ramps and there are no accommodations made. I mean, this was a really, really unfortunate time to be disabled.
So in many respects, he was a disability rights advocate from the jump, from the get go.
Yeah, he had to be. I mean, he didn't get disabled and then say, I want to be an advocate. He just wanted to live a quote unquote normal life. And the only way to do that at that time, was, the way he could do that at the time was to actually advocate for himself. And he was willing to talk about sex. And he was willing to say this. I mean, at the time, sex toys were illegal in most places. They're still illegal in Grenada, as you mentioned, which
Yes,
I didn't realize until you told me that. But yeah, he was also a disability rights advocate. He had this service where people with disabilities would write him and tell him about their sexual issues. And so that was, there were very few places people could do that in culture. And I have these long letters in his archives of him sharing, advice to people with disabilities. So yeah, absolutely. He did so much for disability advocacy.
So let us fast forward to the time when he decided to come up with this device. What did he tell you? What was his thought process around creating what is as you quote as a penile device? Very interesting. Or I saw an ad that you also posted that advertised sex aids. It's interesting the terminology that was used at the time. Of interest to women, sex aids for women, devices, vibrators, books, do-it-yourself info, catalog, and then I believe he lists his address there. So tell us about his thinking behind coming up with such a device.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically he said, look, he was devastated, right? He couldn't get an erection. His penis didn't work. And he thought there has to be a solution. He didn't really want to start a company, but he looked for a solution. And the devices, the sex aids, and you mentioned the terminology.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is they were also called marital aids at the time. Because
marital
sex toys
aids,
always
interesting.
Yeah, sex toys always reflect the cultural norms, and so it was assumed if you were using them, it was to enhance your marriage, and that's how you get around the laws. But he saw what was on the market, and there were cheap toys made of polyvinyl chloride, the really crappy plastic. Some of them smelled. Some of the rubber toys smelled like tires. I mean, they were nasty. And so that was one of the things. The other things, so bad materials, bad designs, things you wouldn't want to use. And then they were all designed to look like Caucasian genitals. It was all for white people, basically. Nothing for someone of his skin color or basically any other skin color. If you wanted to get a quote unquote black or darker sex toy, they were in, very, very non-realistic colors. The sex toy industry still has issues with racism. I wrote about that a couple of years ago. It's gotten better, but he was the first person to notice hey, I don't want, a sex toy to look white. I'm not white. I want it to be my skin color. So he started thinking about that as well, which is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, wow. So and of course he came up with this device. Did it initially receive any traction from the community, or was there still a sort of a taboo? As you said, it was still very taboo and illegal in that time. So how did he navigate promoting this invention that he came up with?
Yeah, so he started putting ads in disability publications, in the back. There'd be a little ad, you know, do you need a sex aid? This is what I've got. He had catalogs. It's funny because he wrote, like, he was consulting with people at hospitals to say, like, would you tell your patients about my sex aids? Because he really thought, like, I'm going to make this for the medical market. Oh, and here you go. Great. You have that there.
Yeah. Mhm.
And you can see Scorpio Products, he called the business a lot of different things. Scorpio Products was the name he ended up sticking with, but here's Paramount. But so he tried to market it to the medical community. And I have this letter, there's this letter in his archives where he says, look, I want to call these Joy Boy. This is the, you know, I want to give my dildos like a fun name. And the woman writes back and is like, no, like there shouldn't be fun with this. Like it needs a more sterile, like medical name. And that was in part because of the laws. So yeah, I mean, there were times when he got letters from the US government saying someone wrote in, they got your catalog, they're mad about it, and they want you taken off the list. If you don't do this, like you have violated a pandering law. So these were things he had to worry about. And he did, that was like the most trouble I know of that he got into, but it was a real concern, you know, that he had to be careful. But then this community, he couldn't sell enough. So he went direct to consumer. Like he didn't worry about medical as much. Yeah.
And you say that he was an iconoclast, really, if you think about it. You said that he didn't care about social acceptability or legal problems. Unlike most of the men who had come before him, you say, he didn't just want to make dildos for money. He saw himself as a healer, and he simply wanted to help. Very fascinating there.
Yeah, he was all about healing. Like, I mean, he didn't make a ton of money. So he revolutionized. So, I mean, and we didn't go into like, so the sex toys were, the dildos that exist before were made of these terrible materials. Gosnell's innovation was to make dildos out of medical grade silicone rubber. And that was a huge, huge change in the industry because the new materials he was using actually could be sterilized. You can sterilize them in boiling water. They could be fully cleaned. They were non-porous, non-toxic. They were actually a medical, grade thing. That was a really big deal because before you have these things in novelty stores that are so crappy, and for him to use these materials, the whole industry is, all sex toys now, or most sex toys are made of silicone rubber. That's the industry, but he was the first person to do it. And he got this idea for, working, because he worked fixing cars, and they had these like silicone parts, like gasket or something. I don't know car terminology as well. It was like this new material they were using, and he got this idea for that. And that was, that basically changed this industry. But his things, they were so expensive because he was doing it in his basement. He had these vats of silicone that I saw when I went up there to visit his niece. And he would, people would send in measurements. They would measure their genitals, send him measurements. They'd also have these architectural drawings of what they wanted. And then he would make them by hand. So that's expensive. Yeah. Right.
Fascinating. And you also talk about on bitchmedia.org, this article was just so fascinating for me, and I learned so much about Gosnell Duncan. Of course, credit to Trisha Keynes Douglas, who put me in touch, who mentioned Harley Lieberman, and who said, look, this is a story that you need to feature on the Bubb Report. So credit to her. But viewers and listeners, also please share this live stream so that other people can have an opportunity to hear this very fascinating conversation here. But you also mention here that he corresponded with a chemist for several months, tweaking various formulas to get the perfect silicone. So it would appear as if, he really gave some thought outside of, you know, the representational factor here, ensuring that silicone, you know, these devices represented the people that wanted to buy them. But he also gave some serious thought to what the quality of the product should look like and feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He's writing this GE chemist, you know, and he's doing it in this very like kind of not being like, I'm making a dildo. It's more like, I'm making this prosthetic device. Please tell me what's safe for the body. But yeah, it was a scientific endeavor. This was not, you know, this was not like just like for fun. Like he cared about quality. He cared about making the best thing out there. And he tried to correspond. I mean, he corresponded with the Kinsey Institute as well. He corresponded with, a lot of top places.
And now the silicone type of dildo is everywhere. It's at all different pleasure shops. You know, it's a highly sought after item. And one of the things I believe is that you know, especially in the context of the Caribbean, sex is still this very taboo subject when we all have it, except if you're deliberately celibate. You know, but the irony here is, and you said you were surprised. You had a look of surprise on your face when I told you that they're banned in places like Grenada, where he's from, and in other Caribbean countries. What comes to mind when you think the irony of a Grenadian behind this particular invention, and it's actually banned in the country where he came from?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny too, because he was born in the 1920s. So you would think that things had changed by now.
Right.
You know, you would think that that in Grenada, they would be legal. And so it is ironic that this person would create an invention that changed an industry, changed the world in a way. And in their home country, if he were to, or his relative were to bring back his inventions or even his archive, like if I went there with his archive of dildos, which I have, I could be arrested. And this is I don't know the exact law, but this is kind of crazy, and it shows the stigma, right? Because Gosnell wasn't, yes, some of these sex toys were for pleasure, for sure, but Gosnell was trying to fix a problem. Gosnell was disabled. He was in a wheelchair. He couldn't walk. He was doing this to actually, you know, fix his relationship with his fiance, and to make sure, and to please him, or please her. And, you know, if you look at it from a traditional values point of view, this was about, you know, heterosexual marriage and, you know, improving his marriage. So in that way, it's not even controversial. Because always through the history of sex toys, what's been more controversial is masturbation, which of course, that's what a lot of people do with sex toys. But for his particular situation and how he marketed the sex toys, you would think that they would be, you know, it's like, oh, you're improving marriage. Like who, you know, what traditionalist doesn't want that?
Yeah. And especially for the differently abled community, because I believe when people think about the differently abled, notions of sex doesn't come up. As if, you know, you experience a tragic life event, you become differently abled, and therefore conversations in sex just does not, stops. You know, so
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I mean, my
I think that's
grandfather.
important. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh no, my grandfather was in a wheelchair, and I didn't meet him. He died before I was born. But when he had multiple sclerosis, but when he got sick, you know, they were at the doctor, they mentioned nothing about sex. And my grandmother, RIP, RIP to both of them, said, what about sex? You know, and this was around the time of Gosnell. They were born in the 20s as well. And the doctor said, well, I don't know. We can't tell you anything. You know, there's nothing. You figure it out. And, you know, it's heartbreaking to hear that about my own family. It's heartbreaking to hear that, you know, that's still something that disabled people today, at least in the US, I don't know about Grenada, they go and a lot of times people mention nothing about sex. It's like, because we don't see disabled people as sexual beings, which is ridiculous. It's like, you're right. They get this injury and suddenly they're not considered a sexual person. They're not considered fully human, because to be fully human is to be sexual. And yeah, so I mean, I think this was a big, a big gap, a big thing that was missing. And is the problem fixed today? Do we treat disabled people with the full humanity we should? No. And it's because we're uncomfortable talking about sex. But yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking, the letters to Gosnell about, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to please my wife, she doesn't want me anymore. I mean, it's just, it breaks your heart, and it goes beyond just like, ooh, this is fun, it's sex. It's like, these are stories about individuals who are devastated, and like the very least we can help them live fully human lives.
Yeah. Talk to us about his wife. They remained a couple, I believe, in spite of that disability. Was she also Grenadian, or was she, do you know if she also had immigrant roots?
Yeah, she was from Grenada. They met there. And that's why he went to Brooklyn. Like, he was kind of like keen on her. He kind of liked her. And he was just supposed to like visit for a few days. And then, they kind of fell in love. But yeah. The rest is history. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and she helped him. She helped him out. I actually met her because she only died a few years ago. She'd had a stroke. She wasn't in great condition, but she did remember this woman in the sex toy industry, Dell Williams. And when I mentioned her name, and she gave a little shimmy, even though she couldn't talk. So that was cute. But she always helped out Gosnell. He always had a different venture. So dildos, like when he was doing that, she was kind of like, something else. But that was the thing that stuck. But she didn't know that he always had like these healing businesses, this business, that business. So yeah, there she is. And she stuck with him and helped with the business. And yeah, I mean, she was an integral part, and they really did love each other. So yeah, and she was pretty open-minded to be willing to work with, have a husband who is in the sex industry that's marginally legal, and to be helping him with this. I mean, to be doing this even today, even when I say I'm writing about sex toys, people are like, but back then to be making sex toys, it's unbelievable. They're true pioneers.
What kind of push? I mean, we are both in the academy. I'm also an associate professor here in the Washington, D.C. area. And we know anytime, for example, I attend the National Communications Association conference, and anytime, conversations around sex comes up, some more socially conservative colleagues, they bristle at that. And you would think that people who are in the academy, who should be well-read and more open-minded, also tend to, bristle sometimes at no. What has been the reaction to this particular research?
So like Gosnell in general?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so when I first proposed to study sex toys in grad school with my advisor, he told me not to. He said it was too controversial, and that I would never get tenure. Yeah, he did. And he was a nice guy, Steve Vaughn. But he was actually, they say you choose your advisor because they're like similar to your dad. And I bossed my dad around, and I could boss Professor Vaughn around. And so I was like, no, I'm gonna do it. He's like, well, you'll never get tenure. And I was like, well, Chili's Bar and Grill, that chain restaurant where I used to wait tables, they told me they'd always take me back. And he was like, okay. And so I did it. And I don't have tenure now. I taught at Georgia Tech. I've become a full-time writer. So in a way, he was right, but my career's taken a different turn. And, in a turn that like works better for me. But yeah, there were a lot of people who have been weird about it. You know, when you talk about dildos, it's something that people don't, you know, get uncomfortable in academic settings and non-academic settings, or they use euphemisms. And it's something you still like face today. You know, and the only way to counter this is to just keep talking about them, because then you wear people down and they're like, oh, okay. But yeah, I've had all, or that's not the only way. That's what I do. But yeah, I've had a lot of like crazy reactions, and it's just like, whatever, like this is important. And yeah, I mean, he got a lot. You know, it's like for me to complain about, it's like Gosnell had to deal with a lot more stuff. It's like, I'm just writing about him, studying him, but Gosnell had to take on a lot of things and a lot of criticism and just go forward without caring what people thought.
And that is what I think I admire about him most. He was this iconoclast, and you know, he really did not give AF, if you will, in that way, right? And I appreciate that, and I wish more people would be like that, have the courage of their convictions, and let the chips fall where they may. So let us get some viewer comments. Let's get some viewer comments. Vonnie James is saying, thank you for being bold to work beyond the limits of your tenure. You will benefit more from taking this major academic risk. Certainly, I hope that you would visit Grenada at some point. Yes. That would be really nice.
I would love to.
Did you get a sense of who Gosnell's, did he ever talk about his Grenadian family? Did he ever?
Not really, but his niece mentioned he has like kids who live there now. And I've been trying to find, since this is in Grenada, I've been trying to find one of his kids. He has 5 kids. I think a couple still live there. So if you're related to Gosnell, I'd love to hear from you.
Okay. So viewers and listeners, Gosnell apparently has kids in Grenada. I didn't even know that. Please reach out to the Bubb Report and we'll put you in touch with Dr. Lieberman. All right, let's get to another viewer comment. Cadella is saying sex education is lacking in our society. Annika St. John Jones is saying, whoa, what a legacy. Hudson George is saying sex toys is as old as human civilization. At the Royal Ontario Museum, I've seen dildos from wood and condoms made from sheep intestine, I believe, from ancient Egypt. Sex is not a taboo in the Caribbean. Sex is oppressed in the Caribbean society publicly. Very interesting distinction there you're making, that viewer, Mr. George. Thank you for that. Cadella is saying, what was admirable about the gentleman? He used his disability to his advantage. That helped himself and helped others. Kudos. Your thoughts on that comment from that viewer?
Yeah, I mean, she's absolutely right, because she, you know, becoming disabled, and just what I know from my mom talking about my grandfather having to be in a wheelchair. I mean, it's devastating. Dr. Bubb should be in church. Okay. But no, but yeah, I mean, he could have just been devastated and been, I mean, most people, you know, I don't know about most people because I'm not an expert in this, but a lot of people, when they're when they get disabled, they get depressed, and, you know, they aren't thinking like, how am I going to improve my life, in this certain way. They're asking others for help, but instead Gosnell was always about like helping others. So he wanted to help himself with sex toys, but he wanted to help the community as well and make a change for other disabled people. And he had to take this risk. But he was always considered himself a healer. He, you know, like I said, he gave people advice, had an advice service as well. So he was just the fact that he was out there listening to people is, you know, listening to other disabled people made a huge difference in being willing to talk to them about the subject when no one else in the world was willing to do that. That, you know, he changed people's lives in that way as well.
Absolutely. Let's get to one other comment here. It's a very interesting discussion. I'm edified a bit and never considered in any serious way the needs of the disabled in this way. So this is good. This is good. That this viewer thought about this in that way. Let's see. Really interested to learn about Mr. Gosnell Duncan. Yes, absolutely. Let's see. Let's see. Other comments, folks. Keep them coming. We have lots of comments. Some are not. There's also some crosstalk in the chat as well that's not related to what we're talking about. But is there anything else that I missed that you wanted to add some context to? Do you feel as if we pretty much covered the gamut of Gosnell's life? Is there anything else that perhaps the Grenadian public should know that we did not cover?
I think that's it. Yeah, I think we covered the most important parts.
Yeah. And tell us about your other publications. You have some other books coming out?
Yeah, I'm working on a book on gigolos, like male sex workers with female clients. Now, I don't know if Grenada has gigolos, but I'm sure there are.
Publicly, we're not. I mean, publicly, it's not in the literature. It's not talked about. But sex work, historically, in popular culture representations in the Caribbean, for example, on the neighboring island of Trinidad and Tobago, you had a Grenadian Trinidadian calypsonian by the name of the Mighty Sparrow, and he did some songs in the 70s that really speaks to the oldest profession in Trinidad. So it's there, but it's not publicly talked about, if you will. You will have those conversations in very hushed tones.
I just Googled Mighty Sparrow, but yes, that's good to know. So I mean, is sex work legal in Grenada, or it's probably illegal, right?
No, it's illegal. Yes.
Yeah, just like in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's in 2023.
Yeah, except for in Nevada and 4 counties, but there are no gigolos there. There was one, but he retired.
So tell us about that book. You're talking about female. It's about female gigolos, correct?
It's about male sex workers for women. So it's about guys who women pay for companionship and sex. And so it's the history as well. And I'm also taking it to the present day where, they're on OnlyFans and women pay to text them. Like they actually pay for, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but anyway, they pay for a lot of stuff. We'll just put it there.
Okay. Absolutely. Dr. Lieberman, I really thank you. I will be getting a copy of your book because, your work, I believe, is so important. I might actually get you to come and talk to my students if that would be okay with you as a guest speaker.
I would love to. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, because especially for my media studies class, that would be really good. So, Dr. Lieberman, thank you so very much. What part of the country are you in? Are you in Texas? Or are you on the East Coast, West Coast, Central?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, so you're on the East Coast. Okay, so all right. I thought you were either on Mountain Time or, God forbid, Pacific Time, because the time difference would have been an inconvenience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dr. Lieberman, thank you so very much. People are saying, please post links to her work. So I will post a link to your page, at least the blog. And you also write for BuzzFeed as well. I believe that there was an article there on Gosnell on BuzzFeed, so I will post that in the chat as well. So somebody saying, yes, I enjoyed this segment. Another viewer is saying we need another segment. We need another segment. So who knows? We might have you come back to have those conversations again. So thank you again, viewers and listeners. That was Dr. Haley Lieberman speaking about the Grenadian American inventor of the silicone dildo and other medical devices as we know it. We certainly thank you for your participation in this segment, and we want to thank Dr. Lieberman for appearing on the Bubb Report today. It was a very fascinating conversation. And as we said to Mr. Duncan's children, please reach out to the Bubb Report. We would leave links for you to contact us via WhatsApp. And we will definitely love to put you in touch with Dr. Lieberman, who did some extensive research involving your dad. He is indeed a pioneer, a disability rights advocate, and a Grenadian American that deserves to be celebrated. Okay, viewers and listeners, please stand by. we would be right back with the second segment of the day. The next segment of the Bubb Report comes to you compliments S.A. Johnson Funeral Home. They are a Caribbean family-owned funeral service. They offer a full range of funeral services at affordable prices in New York City. They can be reached on 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Tens of thousands of migrants are passing through the shores of this small beach town on Colombia's Caribbean coast. Most are originally from Haiti, but made their home in South America after the 2010 earthquake. They began migrating north after the pandemic plummeted South America's economy. They are here, waiting for a boat ticket across the bay, with hopes of eventually arriving in the U.S. In early September, nearly 15,000 of those migrants, mostly from Haiti, arrived at the U.S.-Mexico border in Del Rio, Texas. With Haiti's shattered economy and violent crime on the rise, going home was not an option. The world watched in horror as they settled into a makeshift camp on the Rio Grande.
The only thing that they've shown is an incapability of dealing with this crisis candidly in a way where they pretend it doesn't even exist. And we're here to tell you, it exists.
Most were either deported to Haiti or crossed back voluntarily into Mexico to avoid being forced to return to Haiti. Thousands of miles south in that small Colombian beach town, Patrick Charles and his friends were staying in touch with fellow Haitians along the route.
I need to go. Other country. I need it. Hacemos un mes allá, sin tabaco, no hay comida, no sé qué va a hacer mañana.
Patrick is among the more than 20,000 people that have been bottlenecked in this town where migrants now outnumber residents. Officials are allowing roughly 500 people a day to cross the bay and continue their journey north.
And viewers and listeners, welcome back to the Bubb Report. Of course, this week we are going to expand the lens somewhat and really speak to the Haitian migrant crisis, not only in the context of the 12 or 15, I believe 15 Haitian CARICOM nationals who were denied entry from Grenada last week, but of course, this is a bigger story. It's a bigger story of a country in crisis. It's a bigger story of what happens when countries experience crises. In 2004, Grenada experienced a devastating hurricane that resulted in the migration of hundreds of Grenadians to other countries, to other islands. In the 1960s, in the 1950s, after the Sky Red Grenada Revolution, there was also a mass migration of Grenadian citizens to other islands, to other countries. There was a mass migration, for example, of Grenadians to Trinidad and Tobago, a mass migration of Grenadians to Venezuela. one of which was my own grandparents who left Grenada in the early 50s, and they made their lives in Venezuela. But I do remember having conversations with my late grandmother, Catherine Seal Kingston Bubb, and and she told me at the time when they immigrated to Venezuela, they experienced significant xenophobia, and many Grenadian nationals in Venezuela actually had to hide from immigration officials in order to be prevented from being deported back to Grenada. So, of course, what we will attempt to do today is to have a conversation around the context of this current migration of Haitian nationals across the world, really. And here to help me unpack this conversation is Dr. Justin Pear, who is a migration consultant, and we have Alana Wheeler, who is a human trafficking expert. She was also assigned to the Ministry of National Security in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And in short order, we will be joined by ASP Leroy Joseph, who is the head of Grenada's Department of Immigration and Passport Services. Lady and gentlemen, welcome to the Bubb Report.
Good morning, and thank you for having us, Dr. Bob.
Absolutely. Ms. Wheeler, thank you so much for being here.
Are you hearing me properly? Good morning.
I'm hearing you correctly, Dr. Pear. You looking, I'm not sure what you're looking up, but if you can look straight ahead. There you go. Much better. And Ms. Wheeler, I understand I caused you to miss church this morning.
Yes,
so from a heathen like myself should not be causing you to miss church. So I thank you. Let me know whatever penance I need to do to make up for that.
None at all.
Okay. Okay. So I want to begin with you, Ms. Wheeler. I'm sure you probably heard about the Haitian CARICOM citizens. I do not want to call them any other thing because they are part of the Caribbean community. They are us. Okay. And this is how I want to frame this. Our Haitian brothers and sisters who were turned away from Grenada, they were sent back to Trinidad. Help me to understand what happens in a situation where passengers were routed to another country and then sent back to another country. You've worked in the national security space in Trinidad and Tobago. What happens in that case? Does Trinidad then send these passengers back to the point of origin? How does that work? Because as I understand it, they needed a visa to enter Trinidad because Haitian migrants, Haitian citizens do need visas to enter most CARICOM territories except Grenada, as I understand it. So can you unpack that for us, please?
Yeah, well, Dr. Bob, thanks so much. But you shared some interesting information before we started this discussion about your own parents in Venezuela and the xenophobia that they experience. And I was actually happy that you shared that information because I really like to start with putting some things in a global context. You shared some things about Haitians and what's happening in Haiti and their migration and all of that. But when we look at what is happening in the Caribbean region, there's crisis all over the world. And as you rightfully said, crisis causes persons to move and to migrate, right? And so this is what we see happening in Haiti, but it's not just happening in Haiti in the region. It's happened in Cuba and it's happened in several other Caribbean countries where there has been crisis. And of course, we know the most recent one has been the Venezuela situation.
Correct.
Right? So there's some stats I want to share, and not to distract from your question. I have your question. I'm going to answer it, but I want to put everything in context so that because I don't want us to get just caught up on zeroing on the Haitian situation. It's a global problem and it is a regional problem, as you rightfully said, right? So looking at Haiti, we have in the Caribbean extra-regional migration and intra-regional migration. What does that mean? We have Caribbean nationals leaving the Caribbean region and going outside North America, South America. And within the region, Caribbean region, we have nationals moving within from Caribbean country to Caribbean country, which is what has happened in this particular Haitian case. So when we look at the global stats, 9 million Caribbean nationals have left the Caribbean region to go to North America and Europe within the last 10 years. And the number one nationality for doing that is Haitian nationals. Then you have Cubans, then you have Dominican Republic, and then you have Jamaicans. In terms of migration within the region, 66% of the migration that has taken place within the region is Haitian nationals, right? So we're seeing something happening with Haiti, which I'm happy that you've raised Haiti as the issue. When we look at refugees and asylum seekers, 93% of the persons in the region, right, who have claimed for asylum or refugee status have been Haitian nationals. The second nationality is Cuba, and most of them have sought to claim asylum in the United States and, of course, the larger destinations. When we talk about displacement meaning because of extreme weather conditions, storms, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, persons are displaced. The highest number of persons displaced in the region are Cubans and Haitians, right? Then we have Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Dominica. And what we find is there are very few Caribbean countries that actually have a migration policy. What we have is immigration laws. What we have is the CSME. And I know the CSME came up as a question, but the CSME really was established to deal with labor migration in the Caribbean, strictly labor migration. And the CSME is not a legally binding document. So Caribbean countries aren't legally bound to abide by what the agreement was with the CSME. And we also have to remember that a sovereign state has the right to decide who enters their country. That's the sovereignty of a country. Every state has that right to determine who enters their country. And so once you have migrants now who have moved, as you rightly said, a visa is required to enter Trinidad for the Haitian nationals. It seems they did not have a visa, and their destination point was Grenada. So once the end state rejects them, then they have to be sent back to the state of origin, right? Their original state of departure. If they had claimed asylum, right? So when they landed in one of the countries, whether it's a transit country or the final destination country, when they landed, they said to the immigration officer, we would like to claim asylum, then a whole different protocol rolls out with respect to that.
Well, except you talk about claiming asylum, except many countries in the Caribbean are not signatories to the International Convention on refugee seekers.
Yeah, many countries have signed, but they haven't ratified it.
They have not ratified it, yes.
Yeah, so once you've signed it, then certainly anybody landing in your country can say, I am claiming asylum. And even if the asylum application is not processed in your country, there is a country where it will be processed, and you're in a holding bay until that application is approved or not approved. And I'll give you the example. In Trinidad recently, we had Cameroonian nationals who were recently approved for refugee status. So when they landed in Trinidad, they claimed asylum, they went to the UNHCR, the UNHCR processed their claim, and they were granted refugee status. So while the state was trying to deport them, right, the court actually blocked that and said, no, you cannot deport these persons because they have an asylum claim, they have an application claim in the UNHCR, right? And so the state could not deport them. So
correct, but help me. Yeah, I just want to have some clarity for the viewers. Is Trinidad and Tobago a signatory? Have they ratified the UN Convention on Refugees?
Trinidad is a signatory, but we have not ratified it, right?
Okay, but because they have not ratified it, they therefore have a right to deport anyone because it's not ratified.
No, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. Once you have signed the UN protocol, when you ratify a UN protocol, it means that you now have to enact domestic legislation. So what is happening in Trinidad is that because we haven't ratified it, we are really not obligated to have domestic law to treat with the refugee and asylum seekers. So what we have is UNHCR, and the UNHCR, they process the application. So Trinidad and Tobago as a state is not processing asylum applications. The UNHCR does it because they are here in Trinidad. So if, let's say, they had claimed asylum in Grenada, even though Grenada has not ratified, Grenada will still have a process in place where they can make the application to the nearest UNHCR office in the region.
And Grenada does have a resident UNHCR representative in Grenada, I believe.
So they could have
Mr.
claimed
Branch.
asylum, and that organization would have processed it. But in the meantime, if Grenada has no laws to treat with that, then they really would not be subjected to the Convention of Refugees, basically, right? So it's up to now the UNHCR to take care of those individuals. The obligation would not be.
Let me bring in Mr. Joseph, if you can turn your camera on, Mr. Leroy Joseph, who is the head of Grenada's Immigration and Passport Department. Mr. Joseph, welcome again to the Bubb Report. I'm glad that you're able to join us today. Again, I forced you to miss church today, so again, please forgive me. Please tell Pastor Baker that it was I caused you to miss church today. A heathen like myself caused you to miss church today. So I will do whatever prayers that's needed to ensure that you can be forgiven by the Lord for that. But Mr. Joseph, thank you again for appearing on the program, sir. And again, we were having this conversation here with Ms. Wheeler, who is a human trafficking expert in Trinidad, someone who I know you are familiar with. Yes. So what we want to talk about in the context of, and you've provided lots of information to the local news last week about the context of our Haitian brothers and sisters who were turned away at the point of entry. Now, they were sent back to Trinidad and Tobago, obviously. But I want to begin by talking about the due diligence that is involved in assessing passengers. Of course, were you aware before these Haitian citizens were coming to Grenada? Were you aware? Did you get any intelligence from Trinidad and Tobago that heads up? Hey, these folks are coming to your country to look out for a particular issues, or is that due diligence assessed when the passengers land at the MBIA?
Good morning, Dr. Boban. Thanks for having me in the program.
Yes,
good
sir.
morning, Dr. Justin, my good friend, and Alana. It's good to be here today to explain the Haitian issue in particular and other issues surrounding migrants in the Caribbean and in particular Grenada. Well, as related to the intelligence received, yes, we did have intelligence before that they will be arriving here, 15 Haitians. Because Haitian is a concern to Caribbean countries upon arrival. For Haitians to come to Grenada, for the most part, they pass through Trinidad, via Trinidad, St. Martin, Trinidad. And in Trinidad will call and inform us that there are Haitians coming in to Grenada. Because we know the issue of human trafficking or all the smuggling and all that comes with it. We have to be very mindful of who is coming at our borders. So as related to information sharing is critical that information is shared prior to arrival.
Right. And let us talk about that, because you mentioned human trafficking there, and I really want to pick up on that, because as Dr. Pear would talk about shortly, human trafficking is a major concern in the Caribbean. Now, there are some who say that perhaps the Grenada immigration officials missed an opportunity perhaps to break up a human trafficking ring. What do you say to that notion? Or was this not a case in your assessment of victims of human trafficking?
Well, they could be a suspected victim of human trafficking, being as the amount 15, 7 female and 8 male. However, it will be intense to go about doing a complete human trafficking case. You have to contact UNHCR, you have to contact JRCC, you have to contact Trinidad, St. Martin, and all of what that comes with it. It's a matter because it is not a human trafficking case, put it that way first and foremost, but it could be a suspected case of human trafficking, which we delved into somewhat. We did some preliminary investigation into the suspected case, but however, we could not have turned up with something definitively that yes, this is a case of human trafficking. So what we did, we interviewed them upon arrival. We know they are Haitians. To enter the country, the process is that you must have sufficient funds, or you must have not a criminal offense. You cannot be undesirable. So to begin with, only 2 grounds we can refuse a CARICOM national on. One, being undesirable. And that has been a threat to national security, public safety, public morale. And this must be done strict and narrow, not arbitrarily. And secondly, a charge on the public purse, meaning that you should have sufficient funds to maintain yourself while on island. And this decision came about the CCJ ruling in the Shanik Mary case, and also the conference decision of 2007. And when I say the conference decision, I'm referring to the Prime Minister and President of CARICOM member state. Additionally, our law, Section 53C, speaks to sufficient means to support yourself on island. So the Haitians in that respect did not have sufficient means to support themselves. From $80 to $400. Each person probably had some 80, 100, 200. And when you add it up to do the cost analysis with the hotel fee and also the cost of living, $80 could last less than 1 day to pay for accommodation. So as a result, there was refused leave to land on the grounds that they had insufficient funds consistent with the aforementioned categories as I just gave.
So help me to understand, Mr. Joseph, in the context of making an assessment of human trafficking, how long does it take for you to make that determination? Because certainly the immigration officers at the point of entry, are they the ones who make that determination? How do you make that determination? Because some are saying that perhaps, it takes more time to make that determination.
Yes, it takes some time because you have to look at the ingredients to prove human trafficking. Can you prove deception, control? Well, you can prove transportation because they were transported to Grenada. So there are certain ingredients, it must be proven. And I could assure you it cannot be proven there and then at the border. The intelligence will suggest that, and thereafter, upon investigation, it may or may not reveal human trafficking. We just don't know. But to just at the border to say you are being trafficked, it is difficult to prove at the border. So intense investigation must be carried out thereafter.
And let me bring in Dr. Pierre, Dr. Pierre, you've been waiting here in the wind, and I know you have been working. You've done a lot of consultancy throughout the Caribbean. Miss Wheeler and ASP Joseph, they know you very well. In fact, when I reached out to Mr. Joseph, he said, "Oh yeah, I know Dr. Pierre, man. Dr. Pierre, of course, Dr. Pierre, that's my guy." So, Dr. Pierre, you, of course, you're not only a political pollster, but you do a lot of consultancy around human migration in the Caribbean, and you raise the specter and the seriousness of the extent of human trafficking in the Caribbean. So, could you talk about the concern that we as a region should have in respect of human trafficking?
Okay, then. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone. Thank you for inviting me here. And as I said, my name is Justin Pierre. I am the director of research and business development from the Canadian firm of Dunn, Pierre, Barnett and Company Canada Limited. As you know, I'm also a Grenadian. We, as a firm, we have conducted over the last 10 years, we have conducted over 14 migration and human trafficking studies in the Caribbean region, starting from the Haitian route survey in 2015, the Turks and Caicos migration survey, the Pan American Health Organization migration survey that's in which engaged about 25,000 people. We did the CARICOM human trafficking survey. We did the survey in Venezuela, where we looked at the Venezuelan routes, human trafficking routes in their region. When we also conducted the Caribbean Court of Justice pre-trial detention surveys. So, and in addition, our firm has one of the largest databases of the movements of people within the Caribbean region. So the Caribbean, as we know, is a very complex area. The Caribbean we have about 7,000 islands in the region. We're about 1 million square miles. There's no central government in the region. So the challenge within the Caribbean region is that we are 8% of the world's population. Okay, but there is almost 33% of all crime Okay, there are virtually 3 sovereign nations. There are over 300 islands in the just in Venezuela, 315 in Guyana. The challenge we have in the Caribbean region is the whole issue of weak legislation in terms of governing the movement of people, and because the whole issue of sex and violence is seen as a form of entertainment for persons within the region, because also the Caribbean had there are over 83 brothels in the region, and one of the largest brothels in the world were also in the Caribbean. So the Caribbean has been a place of turmoil, obviously through our history of slavery. So with that context, we see that there is a lot of in terms of the movement of people, there are a lot of challenges, and because the issue of CARICOM, the issue of the Haitians, we believe that a lot has to be done. We don't know a lot of what went down with the Haitian with the Haitian migrants, but I just want to say that from my experience is that the situation with regard to the Haitian that happened last week is very unfortunate. Okay, as a migration professional, we really must look at this situation from many fronts. From the legal point, okay, issues relating to the Treaty of Chaguaramas. We also issue relating to the United Nations, and I believe that the situation can be best be described as a learning experience. It's not only for the new administration, but specifically for the Prime Minister. And I believe that it can be described as what we call growing pains, because I know that someone, the Prime Minister must get advice from someone. But that decision.
I'd say that he got advice from the Immigration Department. I mean, they are charged with that responsibility. I suspect the Prime Minister was only telegraphing what was said to him by Mr. Joseph. Mr. Joseph, would that not be correct?
Yes, that is correct. Because we must consider the fact, despite that Haitians are CARICOM national, but we are a sovereign state. And in CARICOM, 2 categories of person move: a natural person and a legal person. A legal person is an economic enterprise, and a natural person is a natural human being traveling on vacation. And whenever you have someone traveling on vacation, they must meet the immigration requirement. We're not zeroing in on Haitians only. And let me say for the record here, CARICOM have 15 member states of CARICOM. Grenada is the only country in CARICOM where Haitians do not require a visa to enter. All other CARICOM member states require visas to enter their sovereign space, but not Grenada. And I believe the immigration acted in accordance with the law. They acted in good faith, and they took a decisive decision, and I believe it is justifiable. They're absolutely wrong. We refuse Vincentian, we refuse Trinidadian, we land several Haitians, we land several Jamaicans, but if you come to Grenada and you have insufficient funds, you become a destitute for our country. And if you become an economic burden, then would you encourage persons to be an economic burden to our economy? I believe we have a country.
So Dr. Pierre, let's pick up on this. So it appears as if there are 2 conversations here. There has to be a policy conversation, and I believe that is what you're picking up on, Dr. Pierre, that perhaps we need to really examine how we look at policy in respect of any country that is in crisis, not only Haiti. Again, right. Grenada was also in crisis in 2004. Exactly. Thousands of Grenadians immigrated in droves to other islands.
That's true.
Okay? I was one of those Grenadians who was displaced in Taiwan at the time of the hurricane. I did not want to return to Grenada after Hurricane Ivan because I had no job, I had no opportunities. So right. So I'm saying, and then there is also the conversation on enforcement, which is what Mr. Joseph's job here is enforcement. So please, I didn't mean to cut you, but I just needed for us to have some clarity around those two ideas.
So,
go ahead, sir.
It has to do with the bigger question. Okay, the bigger question. So we Grenadians, even though we do not sign certain laws, okay, but we live in a community. So we live in the Treaty of Chaguaramas laid on type of specific laws and requirements that we should follow. Okay, also, so we live in that community. We are part of the United Nations. And the United Nations has certain laws from in the 1951 and 1962. These laws were laid down to govern everyone in terms of movement, how we treat persons. There's also certain United Nations principles, something called the principle of non-refoulement. Okay, a principle of non-refoulement, states specifically what happens. Okay, when someone comes in your country, if anyone read a book, or let's say anyone in the government or the advisors, they know what is going on in Haiti. They know that Haiti has a problem. They are CARICOM neighbors. There is no law in Haiti. And the United Nations laid down the principle of non-refoulement stipulates that no one should be returned to a country where he or she will face torture, cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. Okay, so the United Nations has these laws set down. So my main concern is the whole issue of decision making, how decisions are made. Okay,
so what I hear you saying is that there's a lack of political will, not only in the context of Grenada, but other Caribbean countries as well.
Yes,
right. Yes. A lack of political will on a CARICOM scale.
My $1 million question is I will ask, who advised their prime minister and who encouraged him to dispel these 15 persons? Okay, what we wanted to find out. I mean, I know Mr. Joseph is a very knowledgeable, but I wanted to find out, for example, so many questions. So who in Grenada is specialized in the whole field of migration? Anyone who specializes in the Treaty of Chaguaramas, so I can give advice. We also wanted to find out, did the government, for example, reach out to anyone from the United Nations or the International Organization of Migration? And did anyone reach out to CARICOM or even the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees? Okay, did anyone, there are experts in Grenada who could have given the government advice. There's an expert called Dr. Stephen Fletcher. Did anyone reach out to him? Did anyone reach out to Dr. Patrick Antoine? Did anyone reach out to persons like, let's say, Dorset Carmel, or maybe the statistics department? And did anyone reach out to me? I mean, the IOM is one of our clients. So I believe that there is a bigger issue of how decisions are made. Okay, because Grenada, for my understanding, knows the importance of migrants. In fact, we need the migrants in Grenada more than they need us, because 15 migrants, 15 Haitians, would not pose a burden on the Caribbean, on Grenada.
Stick a pin there, Dr. Pierre. Stick a pin. Yes, stick a pin, and because we were having a background conversation on net migration, migration inflows, the economic impacts. That is also very interesting way that you unpacked it on background. So we will talk about that. But I want to bring back Ms. Wheeler here. You've been hearing this conversation. Of course, there are in Grenada. You have the debates are flaring on this. You have people on multiple sides of this equation. But I just wanted to get you to pick up on what you heard Mr. ASP Joseph said here in respect of what was done in Grenada. That is par for the course, you would say, in Trinidad as well?
Yes, it was interesting to hear both sides, because both sides have legitimate concerns. Having worked in national security for that period of time, 9 years working on countering human trafficking, and I would have been in Grenada myself delivering training to some of the frontline officers, the immigration, the police, and some of the NGOs on identifying trafficking in persons indicators. And what I want to put, and I just want to propose this to those in Grenada, is there are ways as frontline officers that we can ask very pointed questions to really get the pertinent information that we require that are red flags. I mean, we could spend a whole session talking about what are the red flags for human trafficking. But one of the things we had done in Trinidad was we developed a pocket guide for frontline officers, because we understand that at the immigration desk, or whether it's the Coast Guard officer or in the airport, they just have a few minutes to interview the person, right? Or to screen the person. And some of the questions that could be asked is like, who purchased the tickets? Who purchased your ticket? Who arranged this trip for you, right? How was this ticket paid for? And if 15 persons come and they say the same thing, the same person purchased their tickets, the same person made the arrangements for them, the same person paid or organization paid for their tickets, those are red flags, right? And while I understand it is a cost on the state to keep the persons, because then you may have to get into a more detailed interview, which you can do a screening, we call it a screening, right? A screening for trafficking in persons indicators. You can do a screening in about half an hour.
I think we're having some audio issues here, folks. Please stand by. We're having some audio issues. I'm not too sure what's happening. Just please stand by, folks. We'll be right back. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching. Let's see if we can get Ms. Wheeler back. I believe you were muted there. Can you, Ms. Wheeler, can you say something? I'm not sure what's happening. Dr. Pear, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. And Mr. Joseph, you can hear me as well.
Yes,
but I'm not too sure what's
well.
happening. I'm not sure what's happening with Miss Wheeler's audio. Miss Wheeler, you need to just log off, please, and just log back on, because we really need to hear this piece of information that you are about to share. But if you can log off, Miss Wheeler, and log back on again, please, because we're having some connectivity issues there. I hope that the carnival bandwidth in Trinidad did not interrupt. But Mr. Joseph, you heard what Miss Wheeler said about how to detect human trafficking and things like that. Do you want to add to what was said?
Yeah, well, she used the word indicators.
Yes.
I use the word ingredients. It's one of the same.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
it's the same. I brief my staff on all the time what to look for. The tickets and so on is relevant. And the origin of the person is relevant. The way you paid for your ticket, whether by check, whether by card or whatever the case may be, is there anybody leading that team into your country? And the list can go on and on. But what I'm saying, in this instant case, the persons, they did not apply as Dr. Justin made mention of. Any refugee status or
they don't have to.
So Miss Wheeler, yes. So Miss Wheeler is back, but Mr. Joseph, I want you to finish your point, and then we get Miss Wheeler to pick up on.
So as asylum seekers, they came as tourists. So let us bear in mind they came as tourists, and they was refused. As any other CARICOM member, so any foreign national will be refused to do that meet immigration requirement. No, Dr. Justin made mention, did we contact X, Y, and Z? But there is no reason to contact X, Y, and Z. It's a straightforward case. They did not, they had insufficient funds, and they did not meet the requirement. And as I mentioned earlier, the Shanik Mary case in the CCJ in its original jurisdiction speaks to that. And
Mr. Joseph, could you, because you've referenced this case a second time, I think people want more context. Could you tell us about that particular case? If you can give us some quick background as to why that case affects how you adjudicate at the border, at the point of entry.
Now, the Shanik Mary case Shanik Mary is a Jamaican national who entered Barbados the 11th of March 2013. She made a false declaration to the immigration officer on a horse. Barbados immigration refused her entry and she was detained. The matter was taken to the CCJ in its original jurisdiction. The court upheld, and to begin with, the CCJ responsible for the application and interpretation for the revised Treaty of Chagaramas. And in their ruling, they say Barbados acted ultra virus to community law. Community law here means the revised Treaty of Chagaramas. In so doing, Barbados didn't have the grounds for refusal. So she was refused on the grounds of making a false declaration. The CCJ upheld that as a CARICOM national, only 2 grounds you can refuse someone on. The ground of being undesirable,
and when we say undesirable here, that has to do with criminality. Yes,
I'm getting
I want us to be clear. Yeah,
that's when someone poses a sufficiently serious threat to national security, public moral, public order. And it must be done strict and narrow, not arbitrarily. So you cannot say that person is a criminal because they commit one minor offense. No. It must be done within, we have certain categories of crime. And they fall within that confine, then they will be treated as undesirable. In the case of a charge in a public purse, a charge in a consolidated fund, if the person entered Grenada and they have insufficient funds, what the CCJ upheld, that person should refuse entry because there will be a charge in a public person, meaning a destitute person. And if you become a destitute, you breach the Immigration Act. And as such, you'll be dealt with. In this instant case, and I repeat, the Haitian did not have sufficient funds to maintain themselves. And there was refused leave to land. Now there might be a bigger picture, a political picture,
and it's not only a political picture, it is a human crisis picture.
Well, yes.
Muammar Gaddafi, who funded the construction of Grenada's Maurice Bishop International Airport, articulately said that when humans are in crisis, they run away for protection. We Grenadians did that as well. So we can have 2 conversations at the same time. So Go ahead, please. Yes.
And I agree. But I am not in a position to make a political decision. I'm not in a position to make a political decision. I'm here to enforce the act in front of me, which I did.
And because and that's your role, enforcement. Right, there you go. It's enforcement. And of course, before we get to Ms. Wheeler, and I know Ms. Wheeler, you're chomping at the bit to get in here. But for context, and I wish our people would look. History did not start on June 22nd, 2022. There is this idea that history started on people who started to become more politically aware of issues back in 2021, and I believe this needs to be shared. And this is in the context of immigration enforcement. This has nothing to do with political policy or anything of the sort. Back in 2021, Grenada recorded increased deportations of illegal immigrants during 2021. 20 illegal entrants deported in 2020. 37 deported in 2021. Illegal entrants from St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Trinidad and Tobago, Brazil, Panama, Colombia, and Venezuela. Now, the amended Immigration Act includes increased fines of $12,000. 12,000 EC dollars, that is, not 12,000 US dollars. So I'm saying all of this to say, that border enforcement is nothing new, and it transcends governments, it transcends politicians. Yes? So, but at the same time, we ought to be having a conversation, as Dr. Pear articulated, in respect of how we treat our brothers and sisters who are in crisis. And Dr. Pear, we will pick up on that that case you've made to me on background, but I will be getting back to you. But Ms. Wheeler, I now want to give you the chance to respond, please.
Yes, so I thank you so much. And yes, I want to keep saying that every state, it is the sovereignty of every state to decide who enters their country, right? We know that. That's international protocol. However, when it comes to persons who may possibly be victims of trafficking or vulnerable migrants, as we say, there is a screening process, right? There is a screening process. And Grenada has the Trafficking in Persons Act. They have a Trafficking in Persons Act. It's been proclaimed by their parliament. They have certain systems in place. So what we want to see is an implementing of the protocols that surround that act, which is screening persons, right, for possible trafficking indicators. And as I said, a screening can just take you a half an hour. If you're at the border and you're a border official, you know that you're processing all these passengers coming through, and you have a very short space of time. What I would suggest to Grenada is that they come up with a very short questionnaire that you can ask persons who might be potential victims. The fact that those persons had $80 each says that there was some vulnerability, right? A migrant won't deliberately travel with just $80. Clearly, they were vulnerable in some way. And what we needed to find out was, what was their area of vulnerability? Was this some network, a smuggling network that was organizing to have these Haitian migrants go to different countries? If it's a smuggling network, then it's for the benefit of the Caribbean or CARICOM to get more details on this smuggling network. And so screening those migrants was critical. Whether it happened in Grenada, whether it happened in one of the other transit points, the immigration officers, I encourage that they try to screen those migrants. You know, it's a missed opportunity. I know it is very easy to say, look, we don't want this responsibility. We don't have accommodation. We don't have the money to feed these people and clothe these people and everything. We understand all of that. But in the interest also of the region also, because those 15 Haitians will try to go somewhere else, right? They've been sent back to wherever they've been sent back, but they're going to try again to go somewhere else because they are fleeing a situation. We don't know if they're criminals. We don't know if they are persons who are genuinely fleeing. But as I said, an interview of them, a screening of them to get more information would really help to determine that. Because right now we are sitting here this morning speculating as to whether they were criminals or whether they were refugees. They don't even have to claim asylum, because the Trafficking in Persons Act caters for any vulnerable person to be screened. And migrants, as we know, coming from crisis situations, they are vulnerable.
I'm going to bring back Dr. Pear, but again, going down in history, and I try to be balanced as much as possible, and I try to ensure that we think about these issues through different lenses. Two things can be true at the same time. It's not either or. It can be both and. This is how I Boolean. It's an academic term, but I would not even go there. But both and. So before I bring in Dr. Pear, I just want Grenadians to remember as well, during the 1979 revolution that we love to talk so much about, many Grenadians fled Grenada and sought asylum in Canada. Many Grenadians fled and sought asylum in other islands. At the collapse of the revolution, many Grenadians again fled to Canada. Many of them who fled to Canada did not have visas to enter the United States. What did they do? They crossed the border illegally. And many of them today are American citizens. But I just wanted to make that point, just to give us some historical context. Dr. Pear?
Yes.
And before Dr. Pear, before you respond, I just wanted to bring up a graphic here, and I want you to explain this particular migratory map that your research and your consultation has been able to produce. So I'm going to bring up that map, and if you can explain to our viewers the current reality in respect of human migration in the Caribbean.
Okay, then. Well, thank you very much. As I said, that we were fortunate to conduct the Venezuelan human trafficking route. So we went to Venezuela to map out all of the human trafficking routes in Grenada. There was a company who volunteered 2,700 cell phones. And from this 27 cell phones, we can see collect through their GPS both geospatial and chronospatial indicators where the migrants went. So from our experience, there are about 11 human trafficking, or I use human trafficking loosely. So it may be human trafficking, may be drug smuggling, migrant smuggling, etc. So there are 11 defined routes as defined by one of the gangs, these cartels from Tierra de Agra. And so there are about 11 of these routes. But what is most important, 4 of these routes coincide in Grenada. So Grenada is in a very precarious situation. Grenada literally sits in the center of 4 migration routes or human trafficking routes. So what we will see over the next maybe couple of months, or even 2 months or 3 months, or even for the last couple of years, the immigration or the police forces will most likely be intercepting persons, drugs, cocaine, all type of illegal entry, because Grenada is in the routes. Yes, in last year I came to Grenada. We got a tip off from someone from Tierra de Agra and another person from El Kiko. So these are some of the larger drug smuggling gangs, and they were saying that some of the gang members or the cartel members were intercepting Grenadian fishermen on seas. They will put the cocaine on them, and let's say 200 pounds cocaine or a ton, and they will instruct them, hey, I put this on your boat, you take this 200 pounds, 1,000 pounds of cocaine, and come back tomorrow or in 2 days' time, bring it back in 5-pound pieces or 2-pound pieces. So when we got the tip off, we informed the authorities of Grenada about the situation. I also met with the U.S. State Department, and the Canadian Embassy. So they had informed us what to do. I came to Grenada, and when I was in Grenada, I think I had got in contact with someone in the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I think I had interviews with the police commissioner and his team. But what is important, I interviewed some of these guys. Okay, I interviewed them. I had the name, contacts, and we interviewed them and realized that yes, there is some elements of drug trafficking and human trafficking in Grenada. So given that context, we know that there are routes. We know that Grenada is a defined human trafficking route. And from our human trafficking study in CARICOM, what we know, when we went to Grenada, we interviewed Haitians in Grenada. So we know that there is a Haitian population there. We know that Haitians come in, and when they come to Grenada, they form what is called a part of a chain migration process. Grenada generally is not the final destination. They will come to Grenada, regroup themselves and move on to other places. So the larger question is that we know the situation in Grenada, in Haiti. We know that these people are economic refugees. We also know that there's more explanation need to be had on the situation surrounding the Haitians, because in my opinion, I don't think that they may not be traffickers from my expert opinion. What I believe that they may be as a situation of migrant smuggling. Okay, and I believe that something should have been done. At least I believe that they should not have been sent back right away, but maybe detained, get some more information, and we know that there are middlemen currently in Grenada who accept Haitians, so there are rules.
When you say middlemen in Grenada who accept, can you expand on that idea, please?
Okay, then. Well, as I said, it's part of the migrant trafficking routes in the Caribbean. So the drug trafficking, human trafficking route, migrant smuggling, it encompasses about 175,000 people. It's a very large industry. Okay, it is more or less controlled by regional persons, person from France, person from Australia, person from Brazil. I mean, so it's a big problem, and because of obviously because the Caribbean border is so porous. So Venezuela, Colombia, and is the epicenter of drugs. So Colombia, the border is very porous to Venezuela. The Venezuelan border is very porous to Trinidad, and because there's a government now in the region that is now into full-scale cocaine production. And what makes it so this government now is the various gangs that is in that government. They are emboldened, so they are expanding the territories to northern Caribbean, and that's why we see, for example, the whole issue of the spice. So the increase of spice. I mean, spice is a form of synthetic marijuana. Is on the increase. The increase in gummies and all the drugs and cocaine and stuff will all coming through the Caribbean, and unfortunately, most of these things end up in Grenada, because Grenada, as I said, lies in the center of 4 defined migration routes.
Absolutely. What we want to do now is to bring back the full panel, because we want to entertain some viewer comments. ASP Joseph, Cassandra Mitchell is asking about Section 4 of the Prevention of Trafficking in Persons Act. Can you talk about that? What was that applied in your due diligence in respect of this case?
And Section 4 of the Trafficking in Persons Act?
Yes, Section 24. I believe that is a Grenadian legislation.
Well, the Trafficking in Persons Act is an act which was never enforced, put it that way, in Grenada. But it was Act number 13 of 2014 has been proclaimed in 2016. So to go to section by section of the act, I cannot say section by section, because it has not been enforced, it has never come operationalized. We have never used it. But it's an act which is a living document, but we have never used that.
And why have you never used it? Given that act would appear to apply to
the human trafficking
immigration.
Yeah, is an act which need regulation to give teeth to it, to give effect to it. So we have the act standing there, but we need regulations now to go over the operations of the act. In the sense that, how do we treat someone at the border? How if we get someone of human trafficking, how would they treat the victim? How would the victim be treated? How would the perpetrator be treated? So you need regulation to give effect. And in the absence of a regulation, it may be difficult to bring the act into operation.
So
however,
it will be difficult to operationalize.
To bring into operation. But however, we have a TIP, Trafficking in Person Act, which is a living document as we speak.
Okay. Hudson George, an avid viewer of George Grant's Sundays with George Grant. So Hudson, is good to always see you here. I was a Grenadian refugee in Canada for 3 years. Canada treated me good and accepted me. I later was employed as a security guard at Canadian Immigration Holding Center. My duties were to escort refugees to immigration court hearing. I was employed by a security company called Pinkerton Security. The Canadian government gave Pinkerton Security the contract to operate a holding center for immigration. Of course, larger countries, obviously, I believe, have more resources to treat with immigrants as well. Let's get some other comments here. Someone is saying, who is in the kitchen feels the heat? It's easy to stay outside and determine what should and shouldn't happen. Mr. Pear, I think you should help them, seeing that it's not a burden. I don't think that's the point you're making, Mr. Pear. You're having a much more nuanced conversation there around this. Yeah. And I believe there was also a point of clarification that a commenter, Benedict Rouget, I'm looking for your comments here. You said both your lady and guest, Mr. Joseph, are incorrect in that Haitians can only travel to Grenada without a visa among CARICOM countries. Again, Dominica and Barbados, he's saying, allows Haitians passports without a visa. So we will confirm that to determine whether or not it's accurate. But I see to the expert, Mr. Joseph, you're saying that Grenada is the only CARICOM country. Is that correct?
And I could challenge anyone on that.
Thank you.
Well, you might have to challenge Mr. Rouget on that, because
yes.
You might need to go revisit the data there. Great knowledge from this lady. I believe that's in reference to Miss Wheeler. So thank you again, Miss Wheeler. Let's get some other comments here. Let's go down the line here. We can't compare Canada to a third world country. Okay, fair. I also do not like the term third world country. That is a derogatory term to me. No country is third world. It's interesting that when the colonies decided to the colonizers decided to get rid of us, they then label us as third world. That's a derogatory term, and we have to unpack that. Let's go. Claudia is saying, it's sad reading the comments this morning. Absolutely no empathy for our Caribbean brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Rosalind is saying, had they been sent back to Trinidad, what would have occurred? It feels a bit like fingers have been pointed, stating that proper due diligence wasn't done in Grenada. Ms. Wheeler, I want you to pick up on that idea. It seems as though we just, pass the baby here, pass the baby there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, remember the comment that I made when I said that they should have been screened at some point because they transited through several countries. Yes. So one of the countries should have screened those migrants. So it's not just Grenada, but Grenada was their final point of destination, right? But when you're transiting through a country, I'm not sure how much time there is, or if there is any time at all, or if I don't think there is any interaction with an immigration officer. I'm not sure how it works, right? But the immigration officer may not have as much time with a transiting person as if it is the point of destination. So for the viewer, it's not about pointing fingers. The point I'm making is that whichever country they passed through or ended at, they should have been screened by some officer, border official in any one of those countries. And if they were sent back, right, it meant that there was some issue, even in the sending back, they could have been screened. Once there was the time permit. It just takes 30 minutes to ask a few questions to really make that determination. But again, as I said, they could have claimed asylum in one of the countries. They could have. I don't know why they didn't, for whatever reason.
Or maybe they were not aware that they could claim asylum. There is this idea that immigrants who immigrate are aware of all the laws.
Yes.
Are aware of all of the immigration laws. That is why when Grenadians immigrate to the United States, they hire immigration lawyers because they're not aware of the laws.
Yes.
This idea that people who are desperate are somehow, we are assuming that these are well-educated people, first of all, that they have read up all of the laws in respect of migration protocols in Grenada, in respect of asylum protocols, in respect of whether or not there is a UNHCR office in Trinidad. We do not know that they know those things.
Right.
So, I'm sorry, I don't mean to inject my own opinion.
But somebody
arranged that point needs to be made.
The thing is that someone arranged the trip for them.
Yes.
Somebody arranged for them to get to the final point of destination, right? So somebody would have had information on when they landed in Grenada, what was going to happen.
Right.
Somebody had that information.
So I see, ASP Joseph, you seeming you have all come to agreement here. It would appear that this trip was arranged, if you will.
Now,
yes.
let me additionally, let me say that the GRCC, the Joint Regional Communication Center out of Barbados, that is an agency of CARICOM Impacts, implementation agency for crime and security. I was in contact with them, and they did not suggest any intelligence to prove that they were trafficked to Grenada. And we depend on the Joint Regional Communication Center, the GRCC, for intelligence gathering. And there is no information coming from that center to suggest that the Haitian was trafficked to Grenada or suspected of being trafficked to Grenada. So Grenada in isolation, I want to make it clear, we did not act in isolation. We act in concert with our security counterparts, which is responsible for disseminating information to Caribbean member states.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Is it Dr. Pear?
Yes. Mr. Joseph, I believe that I support what Mr. Joseph has said. I said based on my experience. I mean, as I said, we have interviewed both migrant smugglers it does not seem as a purely human trafficking case, but I believe it more like a migrant smuggling, because they know who they were going to. And I also believe that Grenada, from my experience, may not have been the final destination. So something might have happened. So I think that further investigation is needed. The issue of if it was a migrant smuggling, the issue of money, okay, it comes to I believe that most of the migrants, in fact, I do not know what had happened, but did use most of them who are smuggled, are migrant smuggled, most of them have money on them. Okay, so that's why the situation is a little uncertain, because we have interviewed persons who, what they normally do, the family would give them money. Either the money might be in the suitcase or in bags. I do not know if the suitcase will search, etc. But it does not fit in the normal procedure of how migrants travel. Okay, it does not fit into the how they are travel, and it also does not fit into like Revenstein has certain laws. So in terms of Revenstein laws on migration and Zelensky's model of migration transition, it does not fit into that model of how migrants or how smugglers travel. So that's why I believe that there must be some further investigation. Maybe the government maybe can investigate. Maybe if you have security footage outside, you may see persons who may interview persons, because we need to get on the bottom of it, because we need to interview, we need to find out more. But also, I also want to say that I'm concerned about the decisions, how the decisions were made. How decisions were made. I believe that it's an opportunity that if we had kept the migrants in there or detained them, the Prime Minister could have maybe gone to CARICOM, and the CARICOM heads of meeting, and he would have scored a lot of political points, because he would be the only one who at least had done something. And so I think that it's a missed opportunity for us. I think it's a learning experience, and I believe that in a year's time or 2 years' time, the Prime Minister would have made would not made the same decision, because he would have had counsel. I also believe that if this migrant situation were in Antigua, nobody would have been hearing about that, because Antigua understand the whole issue of migration and how important migrants are. And I believe that Grenada as a country, we have one of the highest rates of migration in the world. Grenada as a country
has one of the highest rates of out migration.
In the world. In addition, okay, from 1800 to 22, there are about 267,000 people were born in Grenada. What would happen is that we, from 1960 to 2019, we have some of the lowest rate of fertility. So we are not producing people. We have our population is small, but what is most important, or on the base concern, the whole replacement fertility replacement rate is almost close to 2.11, meaning that our population would not be able to maintain itself over the next 25 years. So we need the migrants. We need people in Grenada. The population in Grenada is still too small. We need migrants. But what is most important, what has more concern for our country, is the whole issue of something called the dependency ratio. So Grenada has if we take the population, let's say, of 112,000 people, 113,000 people, we divide it by the people who are dependent. So we have about 71,000 people who are working. We have about 39 to 40,000 people who are dependent on those people. So we have a dependency ratio, according to the World Bank and the Statistics Department, of about 52%. So that dependency ratio is too high for a country. So we cannot. It will have strain on the country in the next couple of years. Ideally, our dependency ratio should be about 1 in 3. meaning our population should ideally be about 130, 140,000 people. So we need the migrants in the country. So the migrants did us a favor by coming into Grenada, because even the Haitian can be used as what they do in Suriname. You use them in agriculture. What they do in Trinidad, agriculture. Okay, and why these Haitians are important, why we need more people, not less, is that when a Haitian comes in, he may just get a regular job, but what happens is that he now will have children. He will have children, and his children will become teachers and nurses. And what happened is that their children will become doctors and lawyers and politicians. So we need migrants in Grenada. The country does not have enough people.
And that is because of the declining population, essentially. The NIS is slated to become insolvent in a couple of years.
Yes, so we need people. We need about 30,000 more people in Grenada. And that, I mean, and bringing the 15 Haitians would be an advantage to Grenada, because we need people.
And on that note, we will take a quick break, folks. It's almost close to your lunch hour, and I already took you away from church, Miss Wheeler and Mr. Joseph. I don't know if I took Dr. Pear away from church, but if I did, my apologies. I will engage in some penance if that's the case. So let us take a quick break, and we will be right back for the closing of the program. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG-10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching. And welcome back, folks. At this point, we want to get some closing comments from our esteemed guests here. And I would want to begin with ASP Joseph there in St. George's. Mr. Joseph, and again, thank you for your service. My aunt, Helen Batson, knows you well. She actually worked with you at the immigration department, and you're familiar with St. David's as well, as I got to find out. So although you're St. Andrew's man, but over to you for some closing comments, sir.
Thank you. I just want the record to reflect that for the last 9 years, Trinidad, the state of Trinidad and Tobago, refused over 120 Grenadians, and I repeat, 120. In 2016, Trinidad and Tobago refused 30 Grenadians at the border. In 2013, 2, 2014, 6, 2015, 19, 2017, 21, 2018, 20, 2019, 10, 2025, and 2022, 7. A total of 120 Grenadian was refused in Trinidad and Tobago Piaco Airport. Now, I will not compare that with what we refused. However, we landed several Haitian nationals. Within the last 6 months, over 75 Haitian was landed in Grenada. So we're not arbitrarily refusing Haitian at the border. They all came prepared for immigration, have all the finances, what is stated, what is our policy, and they was landed. In this instant case, 15 did not meet the immigration requirement, and as a result, there was refused leave to land and repatriated to Trinidad. Why Trinidad? That is the port of embarkation. So I don't want it to be seen that Grenada refused Haitian intentionally, deliberately. They did not meet the requirement, and there was refused landing. Now I could understand my good friend Dr. Justin Pierre, and the humanitarian side of it. Okay, we look at what happened in Haiti. Haiti have over 100 gangs, 100 gangs. We do not know if criminals are moving. Person moves on vacation, person move on as business, people also move as criminals. We do not know who is moving. We depend on the GRCC, the Joint Regional Communication Center, to screen or vet person who enter Grenada. And we didn't get any intelligence to suggest that they came as suspected human trafficking case. Additionally, based on comment made from Alana, Grenada did not sign on to the 1951 Convention on Refugee, the 1967 Protocol on Refugee. Grenada didn't sign on. Grenada facilitates persons who arrive in the state of Grenada and apply for refugee status. Mr. Branch in Legal Affairs, he will facilitate through UNHCR for persons who apply for refugee status. For the last...
Wasn't there a case, stick a pin please, wasn't there a case of, I believe, a migrant from Africa who was detained in Grenada for a period of time, and he was awaiting, I believe, his refugee claim to be adjudicated, and from what I understand, he's now in a safe country?
Yes. He was from Ghana.
Ghana, yes.
Well, from Ghana. He came here during the lockdown time, and he could not repatriate to Trinidad. He spent some time in custody as dictated by our law. He made application for refugee status through UNHCR, the Washington mission, and there the refugee status was granted to him, and he was repatriated to a third country, which is Sweden. So that's over 1 year now. He has been sent to Sweden. And I believe, well, he settled down probably happily there. In addition,
I am familiar with, I'm aware of that case, and so I'm
yes.
very happy for him in the way that I'm also happy for a lot of Grenadians who applied for asylum in other places. But go ahead, sir. Yes.
Similarly, if the Haitians apply for refugee status here, we would have given them time in Grenada to apply to UNHCR in Washington to hear the case, whether approved or denied. We would have given them time. This notwithstanding the fact we did not sign onto the 1951 Convention, we facilitate persons who arrive in Grenada and make an application for political asylum or a refugee status. The Haitian, we would have done the same thing to them. We would not have sent them back if they make that application to UNHCR.
Okay. Mr. Joseph, thank you so much for that very enlightening education. Again, context matters. And the Bubb Report is not like any other platform. We are not in the business of he say, she say, conjecture, this type of thing. We bring educated panelists on here who are experts in their field. So some of the insults that have been directed at some of the panelists here, we are not going to tolerate those comments. We think it's absolutely unacceptable. But let me bring back Dr. Pear here for some closing comments. And Ms. Wheeler, I did not forget about you. We are saving the best for last, as they say. Dr. Pear, over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you very much. I once again, Mr. Joseph, Ms. Wheeler, I know I'm this month in February, this month we met on a panel, the Freedom of Slavery conference. So I'm very familiar with Ms. Wheeler. She was very accommodative to us when we did the human trafficking study, and I just want to thank her for that. As I said, that all I'm saying is that we as Grenadians, we have certain laws. Okay, I know that we can stick with the law, but I think that we are also a community of people in terms of CARICOM. We subscribe to certain United Nations, and there are certain.
And we also claim to be a Christian country. We worship a deity who is a refugee.
Yes, we're a Christian country. We're a Christian country, and and I find that the decision was, ad hoc, or in my opinion, the decision was harsh to send back these persons because we do not know this situation. Suppose these persons were sent back or repatriated to Haiti. Suppose they are killed, for example, or murdered. Well, what will happen? Okay, and so I believe that yes, we know that we are living within the law, but we have to need compassion, and that's what the whole spirit of the Caribbean community is. We know that we owe a debt to Haiti. Haiti and Grenada, we have a very good relationship. In fact, Henry Christophe, one of the Haitian, one of the Grenadian,
one of the founding fathers, one of the founding fathers of Haiti, is Grenadian.
Grenada.
Yes.
So I mean, we have this strong connection, and I believe that if you pick up a book, if you're a Black person, you must know what the situation is in Haiti, and we should have at least some sort of compassion about them.
I think people can have both conversations, and we need to have both conversations.
Yes.
And that's why we have Mr. Joseph here, because Mr. Joseph brings in that enforcement aspect of it. He is a law enforcement officer.
Yes, he has to do his job.
Right, ASP. He has to do his job. And at the same time, we can have Ms. Wheeler here, who can speak to those other issues and yourself. Nuance is important, guys.
The only concern I have,
balance these conversations.
One of the concerns I have is that people in the international press or in the national arena, academia, I've met with, for this interview, I've met with persons from the U.S. State Department. I've met with persons from the Dominican Republic. I've met with persons from the IOM, and discuss this whole situation, and everybody is concerned. Okay, everybody said, "Hey, the government, we missed the ball on that one." Okay, and we hope that we believe that it was an error in judgment. We have a lot of belief in the Prime Minister. We believe that he's doing well, but I'm also, there's the concern that he needs to get people need to get better advice before we make those type of decision. And so internationally, I believe that, and the UN can support me, and other agencies can support me. The decision to send these people back was an error.
Absolutely, thank you. And someone is questioning. Let me see if I can get the comment here. The name Pear have some forms of French connection. Mr. Pear is a Grenadian. Mr. Jose, he's a Grenadian. From St. George, Northwest, who accurately predicted the NDC's victory in the last election. Dr. Pear is a Grenadian. There are Grenadians with the last name Pear. Grenada was colonized by the French, and so was Haiti. That's
as I said, Dr. Bob, what makes us different is that we have the database. We have the largest database of migrant people in the Caribbean. Everyone who is a registered voter, we have them in the database. Everyone who is in the yellow pages, the white pages, and we have the ability to take that data, engineer it, put some GPS it, and get data on get data. But I believe that is a learning experience. We have faith in the Prime Minister. I believe that he will do better next time. But we missed a great opportunity, and also an opportunity to get funding, maybe from the international community. We say, hey, we have Haitians here, help us, whatever, and the community will help.
Absolutely.
Ms. Wheeler, your turn.
Thank you, Dr. Pear. Thank you again for that, Dr. Pear. Thank you for your great work in the research and social scientific space and human migration space. It's very valuable work. And Ms. Wheeler, over to you. We're saving the best for last.
Well, all the panelists were excellent. Dr. Bob, thank you so much for inviting me on this conversation. And I just want to thank the people of Grenada for opening their homes to having this type of conversation. It's really important. But I just want to put a plug in for vulnerable migrants. We all have relatives who have migrated to other countries, all of us, whether distant relatives or close relatives. And we all know they migrated for a better life. They wanted a better life for themselves, and they wanted a better life for the persons who they left home. And what I want to say is just migrants generally, right? Let's not talk Haiti or anything, migrants generally. Migrants who are fleeing crisis, they are vulnerable. They're extremely vulnerable. And whatever their reason is for fleeing, we need to have a conversation with them to really determine.
I think we lost you again. I think we lost your audio again for some reason. So yeah, you've gone muted again. So log off and log back on again, because we need that closing comment from you, folks. We're not too sure what's happening, but I do want to get a comment here. I want to pull up this comment from Martin Felix, and Martin Felix is making a very interesting point. He's saying, in our post-slavery context, there seemed to be some kind of psychological need among us to pretend that we're better than each other. In this present moment, it's the Haitians. It used to be the Guyanese as well. But as the economic situation in Ghana has been seen as improving, the perception of Guyanese is changing too. Ms. Wheeler, let's see if we can hear you again. Can you?
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Right. I'm not sure where we left off.
Yeah, you were talking about the need to flee a difficult socioeconomic situations in search for a better life.
Yes, and I really want to put a plug for the vulnerable migrants. That is important to have a conversation with them. From this discussion we've had, I'm not convinced that the relevant officers or authorities had a conversation with these migrants to determine what their situation was. GRCC, extremely reliable, trust them and everything, but is it that the GRCC persons had a conversation with these migrants? So were they interviewed? Were they interviewed to determine their circumstances? Right? That's my question. And I'm putting that to all the different officers or officials that would have had contact with them. That's important. And that's what we call a screening. It's important to screen vulnerable migrants to determine what their circumstances are, not just from hearsay or not just from information gathered, secondary data. We need to determine it by primary data. What are their circumstances? And I just want to give a quote. I know you read something off, but I didn't get the full reading of it, right? Migration is an expression of the human aspiration for dignity, safety, and a better future. It is part of the social fabric, part of our very makeup as a human family. And this is a quote from Ban Ki-moon, who was the previous United Nations head.
General Secretary.
Right? So that's my final contribution. And you mentioned there was a question or a statement. I didn't get it.
Yes. So I'm going to read that again. Mr. Martin Felix is saying, in our post-slavery context, there seemed to be some kind of psychological need among us to pretend that we are better than each other. In the present moment, it's the Haitians. It used to be the Guyanese as well. But as the economic situation in Ghana has been seeing and improving, the perception of Guyanese is changing too.
Yes, so what I've said in my final statement covers that. Let's be sensitive to vulnerable migrants because we all, as I said, we have all had family members who left the Caribbean and went to North America and England and Europe for a better life. And when we in those countries, we were seen as not, a right class of citizens, if you want to say.
And under the previous administration of Donald Trump, we were considered people from SO countries. Let's not forget that as well.
Right, but we were frowned upon when we went to those countries. And so in the same way within our region, we have vulnerable migrants. And so we just need to give them a voice, give them a voice, hear what they have to say, and then we make a determination. In addition to all the other bits of information that we have, then we make a determination, but give them a voice.
Absolutely. Gentlemen and lady, thank you again for appearing on the Bubb Report this week. Now I would absolve you of your sins for missing church today. Okay, but I thank you all. I thank you all sincerely. This was a very important conversation, a very balanced conversation. And these are the kinds of conversations that we need to have to educate our people. For those who did not have an opportunity to see this program, please, if you have not shared this live, please ensure that you are sharing this live so that folks can have an opportunity to hear what was discussed here this morning. And for those of you in Carriacou and Trinidad, as I usually attend Trinidad Carnival, but not this year. But viewers and listeners, panel, thank you so much. And to the viewers and listeners of the Bubb Report, I want to thank you again for tuning in this week. Again, please share this live so that everyone can have an opportunity to hear the program in its entirety. On behalf of the producers of the Bubb Report, I'm your humble servant, Dr. Kellen Bubb. I will see you again next week for another installment of the Bubb Report. Take care now. Bye-bye.